Hi, I am Audrey Hall, one half of Two Black Sisters, journalist, presenter, conference host. What else? Loads of other strings to my bow, but let's just keep it on radio and television at the moment and pass you over to my sister, Elizabeth Cameron.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Cameron. Have a bit of a background in media myself, I might say so. Might go back there one day, who knows?
I hope
For
so.
the moment,
I hope so,
I'm a
Elizabeth.
public sector chick. I have been doing that for about 25 years, been involved with Unison, one of the largest public sector trade union. I've been an activist with them, supporting people in the workplace. I do that in my voluntary role. In my paid role, I've been a safeguarding person, a person who has been promoting user voice for adults with disabilities, older people, children who are in care, young people, for the democracy, their student voice, pupil voice, and then really the health agenda for young people, drugs and alcohol abuse, teenage pregnancy, all that stuff. So that's been my work, my paid work. And I've been very, very dedicated to it. But in between and in the background, I've been a warrior for equalities. And I hope that I can share some of all of that experience as we have our conversations with you. And I'm a mum of four. Just thought I'd get that in.
I am a mother as well, and now a grandmother. I'm so delighted to tell you. Became a grandmother in COVID, and I have now seen my granddaughter at 7 months old, and she is just wonderful. Elizabeth's already a granddaughter, a grandmother, so she has that pleasure. Interestingly enough, all of the things that Elizabeth talked about in terms of her work and her remit are exactly the things that I cover in my radio show. So that's exactly what I'm interested in. And I just call it social commentary, because it's not interviews, it's intimate conversations where we are telling it as it is, which is something that evolved because I was fed up of the bullshit and, forgive the French, but quite frankly, listening to what goes on and listening to how stories were reported and from whatever perspective made me feel that no, I've heard enough of this. And what do we want to know? We want to know what it is, why it is, how it is, and if it's going to affect us and how it's going to affect us. And that's how this whole kind of ethos of mine of telling it as it is came about. But the interesting thing is, it sounds as though it was something that's been manufactured, but in actual fact, because of the quality of the guests that I'm speaking to, they tell it as it is anyway. Elizabeth has been one of those guests, and I would urge you to check out her program, because it was one of the ones last year that, I beg your pardon, it was one of the ones this year that really kind of took my breath away, number one, and made me really kind of examine what I'm saying. And when you're doing that, you're sort of looking at who and what you are in your own real life experiences. It is absolute dynamite, and I would absolutely recommend you check it out. It's on the Mixcloud. Elizabeth deals with racism. Then I did another one with Diane Grayson, who deals with the equality pay gap, which is also superb. That's where I learned that not only are we earning less than our white counterparts, but Africans earn more than Caribbeans, and Indians earn more than Pakistanis. And, you know, worse than that, we actually obviously we're paid less. I can't remember what the proportion is that we're paid less. But more importantly, it's what happens to us in the workplace. It's something about how we experience our working day and working life and chances of promotion and who's getting promoted and why and what's happening in with within the workplace and workplace practices that you actually find are also systemically racist. So, you know, the people who are working in the organizations who are white are having a completely different experience than people who are working in the organization who are black. And that's, you know, I had never sort of thought about it in those terms. But when you do think about it in those terms and try and marry the two, then you can understand why there is this conflict and this huge misunderstanding. But yeah, it is interesting that they are the things that Elizabeth talked about are exactly the areas of work that I am most into. And of course, I forgot to say, backed up all the way by the most glorious jazzy vibes. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you for all of that. And I will actually post it with the next link that follows underneath this show, so that everybody gets the opportunity to enjoy it. In actual fact, you taped it through Zoom, so we probably have a face-to-face of that, but you're so clever. She's done such a good job and made me sound so good. But what I want to thank you for, Audrey, is the courage and the bravery you show in your programming. And of course, we thank All FM for that, that giving you that opportunity. But it's what you chose to do as a media professional when so many people are painting such a bad picture of Black people. There's so much prejudice out there because of a picture that the media helps to perpetuate of over-sexualized Black women and gangster young Black men. And all of this goes to bearing when you see the arrests, you look at what happens in sentencing, and you look at what happens in mental health, and how we're more likely to be tasered, 5 times more likely to be tasered, 9 times more likely to be stopped and searched. All of these figures, and we are, of course, we're all carrying knives, we're all doing something terrible, but are we? No. Actually, you'll find that it's a majority of white people who are still doing the crime. So this fit up picture of it's Black people all going crazy on the street really needs to change. So I thank you for every step you made to do something about that, of which brings us to a very important thing that we celebrate today, which is the life of Debbie Makki. Somebody who, Audrey, I had the opportunity to meet through your own programming, a show that you invited me on, where we did talk about knife crime. And we had an ex-gang member there. We had somebody who went to school with Yusef Makki. And perhaps if you would be so kind to tell us a little bit about the story of Yusef. I want to say that I feel privileged that I met Debbie through you, but actually turned out we knew each other anyway. Our paths had crossed many years before. We had a number of common friends. And I just loved the way that she had the opportunity to be so real when she came on your shows. I know she wasn't just on the 2 that I saw. And so I really am glad that we're here today to celebrate her life, her journey, her dedication to her son. I know she has more children, but you want to say something about it, Audrey? You really brought this to light on your show.
Thanks, Liz. I very rarely call you Liz, so I must be sad taking a sigh. I always call my sister Elizabeth. It's quite funny, isn't it? Anyway, Debbie Makki, I had the privilege of meeting at a vigil, not a vigil, at a protest, which was taking place outside of the Crown Court the day before they were going to pass judgment on the person who had actually stabbed her. Excuse me 1 second. I'll come down in a minute. I'm still just recording. I'll be 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Yeah. We'll say yeah, 5. I'm so sorry. Debbie Makki I met at the Crown Court protest. It was the day before the judgment was passed on the guy who had actually killed her son. And the reason that we went along to the protest is because we too had lost our son and felt an affinity immediately. So just went along to the protest just in support of Debbie. And I went with Kim, Dan's mum, because as I say, we'd lost Dan a couple of months before. And we were just going in support, in solidarity for another mum who had lost a son. Didn't know anything about the case. It just so happened that, it actually happened around the corner from where I live. But I didn't know anything about it. Then I'd not been looking at the local press. We just went along in support. I met Debbie at the day. I spoke to her. We exchanged details, and then we take it from there. I invited onto the show. She came on in her own right, and she also came on as part of panel discussions, and she really enjoyed her time. She always said to me, Audrey, you're the only person who asked me how I am. We became very, very close. And when she passed, it absolutely took the floor from underneath me. That's what happened, with the loss of Debbie Makki. She'd died before she'd seen justice for her son. And it was just almost, people always talk about loss and look for words. And the best that I can do for Debbie is I was blessed to have known her. I'm blessed to have known her family. The friendship that we shared was so genuine, was so real. The fight that she had for her son and the love for her family, she was fiercely protective of every single one of them, and she loved them all. And that's what I would use when I think about Debbie Makki. She taught us, and with such dignity as well, with such dignity. Because she was you're still on mute, such dignity because of the way that she was treated in the press and the way that she was treated in the court. She said she was treated as a criminal in the courts. And in actual fact, at the candlelit vigil that she went to, which is, I do have that clip, that's what Debbie did. That's what Debbie said. She stood at the lectern and basically said, I wasn't allowed to speak in court.
Beautiful.
I wasn't allowed to speak in court, and if I was, this is what I would have said. And she delivered the speech, where she was talking about who Yusef was. So heartbreaking, Elizabeth. But I spoke to Jade today. I've been in touch with Jade today, obviously to pass on my regards, your regards, and we had a little exchange, and they're okay. The documentary is supposed to be out at the end of the year. Postmortem, I think, is supposed to be around at the end of the year. So that's probably when, I'm hoping Jade, well, she says she will anyway, so Jade will come in and talk to me.
I hope so.
Elizabeth, I've not been able to play any of Debbie.
Oh, it's just heartbreaking. And, thinking about good things that have come out of it, I don't know. I'm struggling. The rate at which aggressive policing is used on young men, it's horrendous. But this report will show the GMP are sort of, I don't want to say sitting on a report because they've had a change of chief constable. So, I've been made to understand the difficulties that have been releasing that. And anybody going to a new job would not like to inherit somebody else's bad report. I'm sure that you'd want to put your own stamp on it. You'd want to read through it. You'd want to have the sense of it before you release something that you're going to have to then talk to. So I have been made to understand that. I mean, there comes a time where, I kind of have to take my activist hat off and deal with things as a strategic manager and just kind of go, well, yeah, I can keep shouting from the rooftops, but this report is still going to have to go through these many hands before it comes to us. It's not going to change the facts that are there. We have to do something to deal with that. And so when we think about what is the difference between Black Lives Matter, or what has been the impact of Yusef losing his life, I feel that his impact has been to show that knife crime wasn't limited to just young Black men. And I got some of those facts through meeting Debbie, through meeting Debbie, and hearing gang members talk, hearing his friends at school who talked about him and his ambition and who he wanted to be. And I realized this role that the media had played in creating as somebody who it was easy, it became easier then for people to go into court and give somebody a sentence of 4 months for carrying a knife instead of for taking a life. I mean, how does that happen? So, you know, is there any legacy? We hope it's going to change things like that. I really hope so.
I hope
May
so
she rest
too.
in peace.
I hope so too. And indeed, may she rest in peace. She taught us so many things, and she dealt with everything with humility and with such patience. And you know, she and I used to have such a laugh, Elizabeth, because she had a dodgy leg and I've got a, you know, dodgy back and hip, and I've got a dodgy back, and the two of us, we'd laugh, and then you'd come along and there'd be the three of us, and we'd laugh because we used to be the hot chicks on the dance floor running around the place, and we got the three of us
Yes,
all
the
leaning or holding on
millionaires,
to pain or
Bavarage.
doing whatever we have to do. But yeah, it was an absolute it was an absolute privilege, a privilege to be allowed into her life so much, a privilege to be allowed into the family's life so much. I thought she was so special, and she gave me so much, and it is an absolute tragedy that she died
It is, it
before seeing
really,
justice
really
for her
is.
son.
And one thing is, Andy Burnham did make some promises to her.
Yes.
She believed in him to deliver for her. He was appalled at that sentencing, and he was very vocal in saying so, as
Well,
he had
funnily
been
enough,
vocal in Parliament to stand up for our treatment in the north of England, and we need him to be so strong in bringing attention to the sentencing like this. And he said he would be a champion. So I shall be talking to him tomorrow at his press conference, and I'm going to be bringing it up. And I know you're going to be interviewing him, so I'm sure you're going to.
I am interviewing the
to
lovely Andy
account.
Burnham. I'm really excited. I'm doing that on Friday. Interestingly enough, Elizabeth, thank you, because you have said exactly what Jade said. I said I'm speaking to Jade, and I said to her, I'm speaking to Andy Burnham this week. Is there anything that you'd like me to ask him? And she said, I just want him to be a bit more vocal about his support, which is exactly what you've just said. And
Oh
it's
yeah,
a great place to end as well, because we've
it is.
done Rest in Peace for Debbie and sent her our love. And we're ending on the fact that you have been invited to go on this panel tomorrow, which is fantastic, because that's what you and I are going to be doing now. But this one that you're doing tomorrow, you are on as a speaker, and it's a
I
press
am.
conference, and it is so cool, Elizabeth, and you so deserve it. So
Thank you so much.
I'll be watching you. You'll have your
Oh,
sister in the
good.
background. Just know I'm there in the background.
And now, yes, I'll carry your spirit with me. And now I'm going to go to the spirit of two under twos and put them to bed. It's been lovely speaking to you again. And everyone, please, thank you so much. I know we're not supposed to say that. If I was being a real presenter, I say thank you, because there's only one of you. And
Of
that's
course,
all
there's
we
only one
say.
of you.
Thank
Do you know
you.
the joke? You
You
know the
speak to
joke,
one
Elizabeth.
person. I always
Do you know the
remember.
joke, Elizabeth? Do you know the joke, Elizabeth? How
Mm.
come you know that and you're not a presenter, and then you watch all these so-called presenters on television who they've brought in, all the pretty ones, and what you hear every single time is all of you, you all doing
You
this.
don't say
And it's like,
that,
no, the first thing that you're taught in journalism is you speaking to one
One
person.
person.
So well done you. Not
So
only
he's
are you
saying
on this
thank
panel,
you.
not only
Thank
are
you
you
for
on the
listening.
panel, you know the first rule of journalism,
Thank you.
which is not practiced by this plethora of new presenters we have out there. But that's a story for another day. Debbie
It is.
Makki,
That
rest in
might be
peace.
next week.
George
Debbie Makki,
Floyd,
rest in peace.
rest in eternal peace. I hope that Black lives will continue to matter this year. You've laid the stone, George Floyd, and for that we thank you and send love and thanks and praise to your family. May
Indeed.
George rest in eternal peace. May Debbie and Yusef Makki rest in eternal peace. I'm sorry for doing that like a prayer, but I believe in God, and there you go. Has to be. Night, night.
As do I. Good night.
Night, night.